Hi, good Erev Shabbos. It's been a week of conjunctions. You know what a conjunction is? In grammar, a conjunction is a word that's used to connect clauses, not the other kind of clauses, or sentences like and, if, but. It's also the instance of two or more events occurring at the same point in time or space. It's conjunction. Like this week, there was the historic conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, the two planets coming closer together than they have been for the past 800 years and will be for the next Lord knows how long. There's a conjunction that we read about in this week's Torah portion of Vayigash, which literally means to approach, of Judah and Joseph coming together, same time and same place. That's also known as a confrontation. There's the conjunction of Israel and Egypt, in the sense that the family of Jacob, the Bnei Yisrael, ultimately at the end of the parsha, come down to Egypt. So Israel is in Egypt. We have a conjunction today. It's Asar B'Teves. It's the 10th day of the month of Tevet. It's a fast day that we're commemorating the beginning of the siege of Nebuchadnezzar around the walls of the city of Jerusalem, which ultimately led to the destruction thereof, and the destruction of the temple, and the going into exile, and beginning of the exile experience. And it's Parshas Vayigash, where we have just the opposite phenomenon happening at the same time. We have the reunification of the entire family of Jacob, with no Jew left behind, as the expression goes. We've got everybody coming together in almost a redemptive kind of mode. They're being saved from the fear of starvation, and everything looks really good. And there's a conjunction that I suppose each of us are dealing with right now, which is ourselves and what's going on in the world around us. People that we know that aren't well. Events that are happening that are totally confusing, and it's difficult to know, how does one win from a conjunction? How does one make the most of it? What do we do with these conjunctions? Jeffrey Deaver is a popular author of crime fiction. He's got a character by the name of Lincoln Rhyme, who is a forensic scientist, amongst other things, and he keeps on quoting a theory known as Locard's theory. Locard's theory says that every contact leaves a trace. Every time one object comes in contact with another, it either takes something from that object or it leaves something behind. Interesting. It reminds me of the halacha of salting meat. When we salt meat to remove the blood, in a butchery, you're dealing with a lot of meat, and so it's quite a common sight to see one piece of meat put on top of it, fully salted and exuding blood, put on top of another piece of meat, looking much the same, put on top of another piece of meat. And the question is raised, why aren't we worried that, okay, the piece on top is busy pumping out the blood because of the salt drawing out the blood, but what about the piece underneath? Why isn't that going to start absorbing some of the blood that the meat on top is pumping out? And the halacha has an interesting answer, which is that while the meat is busy exuding, in other words, it's all been salted and it's all pushing out blood from the meat, as long as it's exuding, it doesn't absorb. So as long as there's blood coming out of the meat, being drawn out by the salt, we're not worried about the meat sucking in or absorbing any of the other blood. It sounds like we have a choice of being either what's known in Hebrew as a mashpia, or a mekabel, an influencer, or a recipient. And when we come into contact with situations and with people, we can either choose to exude positivity, goodness, hope, bitachon, faith, try and make the communication a positive one, or we can allow ourselves to sort of sink to the lowest common denominator. We can allow ourselves to be influenced and overcome by the situation. And you know what? It happens both ways very often. You can't only be a giver. Sometimes you need to take in order to give the other person a chance to be a giver. But as a mindset, I think that it's important that we try and keep in mind that we can influence the world around us, and we can influence it for good. The sages of the Torah have some interesting suggestions in terms of coping with some of the pain and fear and confusion that surround us. There is a teaching that learning a Mishnah, that part of the oral law, by heart, and reciting it as you go about in the street, as you go about doing your daily deeds, has a spiritual effect of cleansing the environment around you, cleansing the air, certainly. You could think of it as an oral sanitizer. Giving some tzedakah, we understand, our sages tell us that tzedakah tatzil mimavos, that by giving charity we rescue from death. So please make use of those techniques. Learn a Mishnah. Pirkei Avos is full of pithy sayings. It can be in English. It doesn't have to be in Aramaic or Hebrew. Learn a Mishnah. Repeat it to yourself often, public. Share it with somebody else. And also to keep in mind, teaching of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is that when two Jews get together, should be not only for their mutual benefit, but there should somehow be a benefit accrued for a third party as well. So try and see to it that when you do meet with somebody, you don't only think about what's in it for yourself or for the other person, but maybe there's somebody else that can benefit from the fact that this meeting is happening. And Hashem should help us to hear good news about everybody we care about, that we should be able to be a positive influence in the world around us, that the conjunction of Joseph and Judah should end up positive with the reunification of all the Jewish people together, not this time in Egypt, but this time in the land of Israel. And we should be unified and maintain our unity with Avinu Shebashamayim, with our Father in heaven. We should carry that with us wherever we go and share it with whoever we can, and be strong as we go from Asara B'Teves, the beginning of a siege, to Shabbat. Shabbos Himelizoach, Refuah Kroiva Lavoy. Shabbos is a time to not scream and shout out. It's a time to allow God to do His thing, and healing should be very soon coming.